Hello everyone, I'm very glad to welcome you in the 61st ISI World Congress of Statistics held here in Marrakesh in a partnership between the HCP and the ISI. And I'm very glad to welcome Emanuelle Baldacci. Hello.
Hello.
So you're the Director of Methodology, IT and Corporate Statistical Services at EUROSTAT.
Yes.
Very welcoming you again. First of all, I would like to get back to this conference that you've been animating yesterday and this concept of post-truth society. What is it exactly?
Thanks for the question. It's very relevant. Post-truth is a new term coined very recently. Internationally, it refers to the importance of communication to users in the world of statisticians. And post-truth combines two different aspects. One is the development of technology, particularly social media technology, which changes the way we are using information, the way we are accessing to the data, to the information, to the results, and the way we are spreading this information to others. For example, social media rely on peers and groups that are trusting information that is sent by one of these persons. The second aspect is related to a sense of anxiety or distrust vis-à-vis experts. And this is potentially undermining the work of official statisticians like myself, because if the people at large starts having questions about the solidity and the veracity of the data and the messages that are implied in the stories that we are creating with data, obviously our work is in jeopardy. So we started to discuss these trends and how to address them in a positive way. We want official statistics to be relevant, not just because we are looking inward at ourselves, but because we think that we are providing a public service to give transparent, sound information that could help individuals and governments to make better decisions. And there are three main conclusions that came out of the discussion. The first thing is that we cannot sit idle and let this happen without any active involvement. So official statisticians, statistical offices, producers of statistics would need to be engaged in communication, being better communicators themselves, and also be swimming in the big ocean of social media, which means that you need to have Twitter accounts, Facebook accounts, you need to be collaborating also with platforms that are providing this type of information. But that's not enough. You cannot put old wine in a new bottle, as they say, and so you need also to change the type of content and design a new statistical product, which are more attractive to people, which are more telling, are easier to understand to a certain extent, but they also clearly identify what are the limits of statistics. So, for example, the use of visual graphics, visual analysis that through simple charts or simple images try to convey messages which are implicit in the complexity of the data are one way to disseminate statistical information to a wider public. At the same time, you also need to be open about what are the limitations of our data. Our data are precise, but they come with some kind of uncertainty.
Talking about uncertainty, and you've mentioned this concept of trust and maybe a lack of trust toward the work of statisticians. That reminds me of the elections, presidential elections, and for instance what happened in the US, and we've been told some statistics, and at the end of the day it was the total opposite of what the statistics were saying just right before the election. So do you think that this is an example that push people losing trust towards statistics?
Well, this is an interesting example. The statistics that you're mentioning are in fact produced by private opinion pollers. They're not produced by statistical offices like EUROSTAT or any other public statistical organizations. And they are subject, as any other complex statistical analysis, to a lot of uncertainty. There were in some international political events, there were clearly predictions which did not materialize. we official statisticians are not in the prediction business. We don't project the future. We are focusing on the present or the immediate past. And we try to take a snapshot of what has just happened, which is solid enough, doesn't have too much noise, so that it can be interpreted. So in that sense, I think we are in a different context when we talk about official statistics, which doesn't mean that, again, we are not subject to possible challenges. For example, the current scope of official statistics does not necessarily address all the information needs, because these information needs are changing and evolving very rapidly. So for the official statisticians like myself, the big important job and focus is to try to understand what are the information needs, what are the type of information and data that people, governments, society, companies would need so that they're more efficient in making their decision. And this is not a stable environment, it's a fast evolving environment, so we need to listen to society, listen to the market, and see what are the information that are needed. Just to give you an example, at the international level, the UN has just approved recently an Agenda 2030, so-called, for sustainable development.
Yes.
So we need to be able, as the international community, to measure sustainable development in its different dimensions. And this is a challenge because the current indicators that we are producing in the official statistical community only covers part of the information needs. So we need to work more in terms of covering the gaps.
And how would you describe the contribution in the development of the national statistical systems, especially for developing countries, as you've been working for several international institutions and you've been dealing with these developing countries? So how would you describe this work?
I think in this era, in this historical time period, there is a big benefit in sharing knowledge. Knowledge is a key asset, and it's very important that programs by international organizations, including the European Commission and EUROSTAT as the statistical arm of the European Commission, engage in knowledge sharing, capacity building exercises. For example, in EUROSTAT we are doing this through the provision of technical assistance and capacity building programs to a variety of countries. And as you correctly point out, the domain of sustainable development is one area where international cooperation could be particularly effective. So sharing information about knowledge in statistical methods, in technologies, and how these two instruments can help provide better statistics is definitely one important element. International conferences like this that we are in today are a very good way to combine different approaches, network among teams, but then the follow-up should also be a more structural capacity building program. And the international community is very keen to support the Sustainable Development Agenda, obviously, so this is one of the priority areas. I would say that another priority area is the free flow of data. We need to be able to exchange data more openly across statistical offices in the world, and we are doing a lot of progress in terms of how to get there from the technical standpoint. But this helps putting together information which are sitting in different silos, and that if you put them together, they make more sense, they can create more statistical content.
What are the kind of filters you're mentioning when you say the free flow of data? What kind of filters are maybe made up by governments, or?
It's typically difficulties related to the fact that we store data with different formats in different places.
Okay.
And then when we try to combine this data, because this would be the way to provide a statistical indicator which is more telling in terms of the policy variable that we have to study, we have a difficulty of combining these things, because some of the data may have been designed in different ways within national context, and then across countries, each country may have its own system.
Sure.
So there's a lot of work in the international community and in Europe, in the area where we work, to try to reduce these dissimilarities, come up with standard formats, standard protocols for exchanging the data, and be more able to exchange statistical information. Another key enabler is platforms and networks, so the technical infrastructure, if you want, that would allow to exchange this data not physically, not manually anymore, but using the internet, using the high power highways that would allow the exchange and transfer of data.
Emanuelle Baldacci, thank you very much. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you.